Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We're waiting for other members. I bumped into a few that said they're on their way here, but it's a busy morning and we have lots of committees taking place, so we're going to try to get started as a subcommittee. Welcome to the California State Senate's Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Communications. We're going to start to entertain the first bill in our agenda, which is, before I do that, I do want to mention ACA 11 was listed as being heard today. It's going to be heard on Monday next week, so if you're here on that bill, it will be heard next week. ACA 11 by Assemblymember Gatto. And our consent calendar for today are items number 9 and 12. AB 2746 by Assemblymember Obernolte, and item 12 is AGR 29 by Assemblymember Chavez. Those are on the consent calendar. We'll begin with the first order of business, AB 828 by Assemblymember Lowe. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you very much for allowing Assemblymember Chang and I to present Assembly Bill 828, which updates an 80-year-old statute by clarifying that a personal vehicle used in the transportation of a passenger by a transportation network company is not a commercial vehicle. Wanted to also make reference to the fact that in Assemblywoman Bonilla's previous piece of legislation, to which it is repeatedly referred to as a personal vehicle, CP's regulations and Assembly Bill 2293 again repeatedly refer to the TNCs as a personal vehicle. And with respect, I will pass this along to Assemblywoman Chang for additional comments.
Thank you, members. Last year, the DMV issued a memo requiring ride-sharing drivers to register as commercial vehicles. And the memo attempted to apply a law from as far back as 1935 on a business platform that emerged just a few years ago. In response, I sent a letter to the director of the DMV urging the department to reconsider this decision. It would needlessly subject ride-share drivers to more red tape. The vast majority of ride-share drivers with Lyft, for example, are driving 15 hours or less a month. Really just does not make any sense for a single mom driving a few hours a week to help pay her bills to have to register her Honda Civic as a commercial vehicle. Thank you so much for your consideration. I believe this bill deserves the legislator's support.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Timothy Burr. I'm a senior public policy manager in California here for Lyft. At Lyft, our vision has always been to make carpooling mainstream across California by giving folks the ability and power to seamlessly and efficiently share rides. AB 828 is an important bill to help Lyft achieve this vision by clarifying and codifying the status quo where TNC drivers do not currently have to obtain commercial licenses or registration. We are here today to express our strong support for AB 828 and thank the authors, Assembly Members Lowe and Chang, for their leadership on this issue, and we strongly urge the committee to support this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Will Gonzalez on behalf of Uber here in strong support of the bill. Obviously, this is a decades-old statute that never contemplated this business model, so we view this as a simple updating of the statutes and would ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Robert Callahan with the Internet Association here in strong support. We think it's a common sense clarification to provide into statute, so we urge your support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Jeremy Mers on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, also in support of this bill.
Good morning, members. Jason Bright on behalf of the Travelers United, also in support. Thank you.
Anyone else in support of this bill? Do we have anyone in opposition of this bill? Can we make some room up front for them?
Committee members, Mark Gruberg, San Francisco taxi driver, speaking for the San Francisco Taxi Workers Alliance. It's kind of ironic because there's been a lot of talk about leveling the playing field between TNCs and taxis. And in fact, Assemblyman Lowe has a bill that seeks to do that very thing, although we don't think it will accomplish it. This would make for an even more unlevel playing field by distinguishing out TNCs from all other types of commercial transportation, passenger for hire transportation, and give them a special status that none of the others have. There are real costs to this. There are 180,000 drivers of TNCs in the state. If they are not paying these commercial plate fees, then who is? It's the rest of us. It's the public. This is not anything that is burdensome. I know that at our company, Green Cab, we paid $25, a one-time fee for the life of the vehicle, to have the vehicle weighed. And then there is an annual increment to the registration fee that can be either $8 for Toyota Prius, which is most of our cars, or possibly $24 for a larger sedan. So there's very little burden here. Commercial plate on these vehicles will be a tremendous help to law enforcement. I can tell you right now that what we see on the streets, and we have some evidence of this, is an awful lot of insurance concealment and fraud going on by TNC drivers who are pretending that they're not driving when they for the TNC when they get into an accident. A commercial plate on that vehicle will give law enforcement a very important tool. So the other thing I should mention in terms of costs, if a TNC driver is driving as little as 5 hours in a week, that's about 50% more than the average driver drives their car for personal purposes. The typical driver drives about an hour and a half a day or 10 hours a week. So even 5 extra hours a week adds 50% to the use of that car. 15 hours a week adds 150%. And 50 hours a week, and these companies are incentivizing drivers to work full-time through a variety of means. 50 hours a week is a 500% increase in the use of that car, wear and tear on the roads, and the other costs associated with it, including congestion, air pollution, and so forth. Thank you.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Paul Gillespie. I'm the new general manager of San Francisco Yellow Cab. I'm also the former president of the San Francisco Taxi Commission. And I want to say it's an honor to be here speaking in front of you. And I see Senator Pavley, who I have great respect for in this committee on the work that you've done on greenhouse gas emission reduction. When I was on the Taxi Commission, I wrote the law that converted our fleet to hybrid vehicles and cut our emissions in half in 3 years, from 110,000 tons down to 50,000 tons per year. So it's an honor to be here to speak in front of you. I'm here to oppose this bill because I think it's just one more example of where this really unfair two-tiered system is being created between people who are doing essentially the same work, taxi drivers and TNC drivers. And I know, being a general manager now of a company, just how much we have to do to comply with the laws of this state, whether it's workers' compensation, whether it's clean vehicles, whether it's serving the disabled, and getting commercial vehicle license and commercial insurance for our vehicles is a very important thing that costs us a lot of money, but is a good idea and needs to be done. And it almost feels like this bill is an attempt to repeal the English language. It's clear to anyone that TNC drivers now are working as commercial vehicles. And it's a very disturbing trend that I see where the DMV originally made a ruling, a staff ruling, that these were commercial vehicles, and under pressure from multi-billion-dollar companies, this was rescinded or held back a week later. And this is a pattern we see constantly around the country where staff people and people who are charged with carrying out the laws or making one decision only to have folks with, I would say, a key to the back door coming in and getting those staff recommendations repealed and overturned. And we're saying now that TNCs are successfully competing with taxi companies. Well, I guess that's easy to do if you don't have to buy commercial insurance. If you're essentially lying to your insurance company about what you're doing with your vehicle. And here is another example where it's kind of a death of 1,000 cuts that we're going through. The people who are regulated, following the rules, are once again being confronted with a situation where people doing exactly the same work are being treated in utterly different ways. And in my opinion, in contradiction of the 14th Amendment, the issues that were solved during the Civil War in this country about equal protection. And the authors of the bill are saying that, well, we don't want to have these drivers jump through any more hurdles. Well, cab drivers and cab companies jump through a lot of hurdles, and they're all there for a reason, to protect the public safety and to make sure that people aren't being ripped off or that proper insurance is there. And, I don't feel like this is a hurdle. I feel like it's registering or being considered a commercial vehicle is simply something that makes common sense that the staff members of the DMV felt was appropriate. And now, as a result of political pressure that we're seeing time and time again, cab companies and cab drivers are really in a struggle for our lives right now. And, we often hear that, well, if people don't like the way that Uber and Lyft do things, they have alternatives. Well, how long will those alternatives be around if we can't compete, if we can't attract drivers, if we have to follow a whole set of rules, as long as your arm, that TNC drivers don't have to follow. So I'm very much opposed to this bill, and I think in fairness, this committee should reject this bill and have TNC drivers be commercial vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. If I imagine you guys are in opposition, if you just state your name and your position on the bill, please.
I'm Barry Korngold. I'm with the San Francisco Taxi Workers Alliance. I absolutely oppose this bill. They're doing commercial work. Everybody knows it.
Good afternoon, committee members. John Kabatek on behalf of the California Delivery Association, representing the same-day delivery courier messenger companies in California, in opposition.
Mr. Chair, members, Michael Young on behalf of the California Labor Federation. We're also opposed to the bill.
Good morning, Senators. Tom DiEsso, San Francisco Yellow Cab. I'm opposed to this bill.
Good morning. My name is Marcelo Fonseca, serving my second term on the board of directors, Yellow Cab Co-op in San Francisco. Full-time driver for almost 28 years. I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Greg Cook, representing the Greater California Livery Association. If I may ask your indulgence, sir, I'd like to bring up a couple of issues that have yet to be discussed. One issue is the issue of the finances of this system. 18 months ago, the DMV arbitrarily and I believe unlawfully suspended the collection of this fee. As a result of that, the general fund, the state general fund, has been subsidizing these TNC companies. It's a critical problem. The second is a big consumer issue. When these TNC vehicles are leased through a company that the TNC companies recommend, when those vehicles are leased, the dealer who is operating as an agent of the DMV, filling out the registration form, asks the person, put in the name of the leasing company, which they do, and then there's a question that under penalty of perjury, you state whether or not this vehicle is going to be used for hire services. And the TNC companies are telling their drivers, no, check, no. And then the person signs a statement knowingly, I'm signing this under perjury. Then the dealer signs at the bottom of it that the form is correct. So the dealer now is knowing that they're forwarding a form that is incorrect. Now that has two problems. One problem is obviously the perjury that the TNC companies are asking their drivers to fulfill, and I have evidence of that, which I have provided to each of your staffs. The second thing is that the value of a commercial vehicle for resale purposes is less than the value of a personal used vehicle in resale services. As a result, The leasing company is getting an inflated value if they take the vehicle back for resale. And most important of all, the consumer who's buying that vehicle from the leasing company that has been used for commercial purposes doesn't know that. So you've got two big problems. A major problem of taxpayers of California subsidizing the industry, and a second problem with the TNC companies telling their drivers to testify under perjury, under penalty of perjury, information that is just not true. I strongly urge your no vote on this bill.
My name is Peter Miller. I'm a San Francisco taxi driver, and I'm opposed to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody out in the public, anybody else want to comment on this bill one way or the other? Okay. Well, it's no secret that I'm opposed to this, and of course I had to stand up last week and oppose a budget that I supported on the transportation element, taking an opposition position against, the highway patrol in building the facilities they need and providing the funding they need because of this situation that currently exists among the administration. There isn't a bill in support of the TNCs that this governor currently won't sign. And there isn't a bill that this legislature won't support. And I think that is very, very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate to see you bring in a bill forward to this committee asking to level the playing field, then bring another one to unlevel the playing field. I drive a truck, as I mentioned as an example, I drive a truck, and I don't use that truck for any commercial activity. But in the state of California, anybody that drives a truck is subject to a commercial license. Now, I do zero business, and I get zero personal financial gain, but I have to pay a commercial license along with every other truck owner. I don't know what the purpose of that law, but my disappointment is that you're not looking to repeal that fee on truck owners because they're not engaging in commercial business. Yet, for this industry, this $68 billion industry, you're looking to give them an economic advantage in an environment where they have every single advantage available to them. I think that's unfair. I don't see that that is necessary socially. I don't think it's something good either for our economy or public safety. When we have vehicles operating commercially out in the market and they have zero identifiers, they don't have a common color, they don't have any kind of identifying, permanent identifying characteristics that allow law enforcement to understand this is a commercial vehicle doing business or allows the public to understand that this is a vehicle engaging in commercial activity. That poses not only a consumer problem, but a public safety problem. And if we would do anything is to require people engaging in commercial activity to have a commercial license plate as an identifier that that vehicle is being used for commercial activity. So my question, first of all, to the author, why do you think this bill is necessary for, again, this is an industry that's obviously operating for profit. These drivers are operating to make income. This bill doesn't separate a person that drives 1 hour from a driver that works 80 hours. So you say, well, some may work 15 hours. Some may work 80 hours. There is no limitation on this bill. Why is this bill necessary in your mind?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Senator, for allowing me to have a conversation about this. If you take a look at the analysis from this committee, the bill, in addition to clarifying the DMV's statement about personal registration versus commercial registration, this bill also requires the CPUC to conduct an investigation to consider whether existing rules related to transportation services serve the public interest. encourage innovation, and create a fair and competitive transportation market between companies that provide regulated transportation services. So in totality of the legislative intent, I think we share similar goals in mind, which is how do we understand the importance of the industries and how do we continue to address the
But
concerns?
why is it important in your mind to exempt people engaging in commercial activity not to pay a commercial fee? Again, we mentioned that we're subsidizing this company $4 to $8 million a year, a company that's worth $68 billion, a company that has 120,000 drivers. Total, we're looking at potentially 180,000 people out there that could be contributing to an funding that will help provide the necessary safety elements out in our streets to ensure that everybody is playing by the rules. Now, we talk about the PUC not being able to regulate this industry because they don't have enough people. And any law that we pass is really no law because it can't be enforced. And now we're taking an additional step here. Okay, we're not going to properly fund the PUC. They're not going to collect the fees necessary to conduct the oversight. But in addition to that, we're going to underfund law enforcement in our streets to make sure they can't do the job either. $4 to $8 million a year added up over many years is quite a bit of money in this state. Now, we took an action to increase registration fees by $10 for all of Californians. Do you support increasing their fees by $10 so that we can give them a subsidy of $4 to $8 million?
Well, I think the extrapolation that you're making is quite extraordinary in this determination
It's a fact.
But
we just voted to do that.
Would you like me to answer, Senator?
Yes.
Okay. So as I responded to your observation and conclusion on this issue, you have made it very clear as to where your position is. The difference between specifically on the issue between commercial and personal registration specifically is simply that of this. You get a commercial license plate and you pay extra fees for the size of the vehicle. So I believe there may be a false narrative behind the difference in the distinguishment of public safety. In addition, the difference between driving your personal vehicle is such that in the TNCs, individuals and parents may turn it on to take a drive, to drive an individual to a destination. They may then turn it off to go pick up the child from school. They use their vehicles for a number of different reasons, whether kids to soccer or whatever it might be. And so in the innovation economy, things change, and the regulatory environment does not always fit into what is in practice, which is why, again, in this bill, as you have seen, the bill requires for this study to occur to address some of these other additional concerns that I think are equally important to have a conversation about.
Well, taxis use their drivers for the same reason, right? They can turn off and use the vehicle for their own personal. Why didn't you exempt the taxi industry from this?
Well, the conversation is specifically on the transportation network companies, and this was in response to clarifying a statement from the DMV, in which we already know was in practice. As you well know, I also have a bill that has come before your committee that you supported related to putting the taxi cab industry under the Public Utilities Commission, because it's important that we address and try to manage and seeing where there might be parity. We don't always keep up to date with regulations, and so this is the perfect
Why
forum
don't
for
you
that conversation.
exempt the taxis from this bill?
I'm focused right now on the transportation network companies
Why?
because that is my focus on this bill. If there is a concern that you might have, I'm hopeful that part of the dialogue will continue to occur in the study as provided in the bill.
So you think it is absolutely important for the state of California, for our economy, for consumers, for public safety that we subsidize a $68 billion company?
I don't agree with your assessment, Senator. We're not subsidizing the industry. Specifically, through this bill, it clarifies where the DMV has already stated. about a personal versus commercial. In addition, Senator, this will help identify the concerns that you have addressed with a study in a comprehensive way.
So you don't believe $48 million impact on our state budget is a subsidy on this corporation, this industry?
I do not agree with your assessment, Senator.
How would you clarify it? How would you classify it?
This is simply codifying what a statement that the DMV has already made, a state agency has already made.
But they also made a statement saying that they were commercial vehicles. We understand that the governor is in charge of the state, and he appoints the directors, and he has some influence over what those departments say. We already know his position on this industry. So you're talking about the second statement, not the first one.
Well, as I mentioned in my opening, the CPUC's regulations and Assemblywoman Bonilla's Bill 2293 repeatedly referred to these vehicles as personal vehicles.
I don't understand that. You're saying Bonilla's bill did that?
Assemblywoman Bonilla's Assembly Bill 2293 repeatedly referred to TNCs as personal vehicles.
But they're used for commercial activity. A personal vehicle, just like I have a truck that's not used for a commercial activity, but I have to pay a commercial plate. You're talking about a personal vehicle, exempting them further from commercial plates when they are involved in commercial activity. That's a concern I have. Anyway, it's obvious what this is about and why this is coming forward. Senator Hill, did you have any comments or questions?
I did, if I could, and I just wanted to kind of mention and state really where I'm going to be coming from today on this bill. You know, it's kind of a conundrum for me. You know, I represent Silicon Valley, it's right next to Assemblymember Lowe's district, and certainly in my district there are thousands of people who work in this industry and who are supported by the industry, and so it's always a challenge. But I go back to when I first, when there were representatives from the industry in this building, and they came to my office and started talking about, well, we're TNCs, we're different, we do this and we do that, and we're not a regular transportation company. And I said, I don't buy it. I said, you're no different than a cab. The only difference is that when I hail a TNC, I do it on my app. When I hail a cab, hey, cabbie, I yell out the window or to do something else to get the cab. But you're providing transportation from one point to the next. Now, saying that, you know, and from the beginning, I've been supportive of the chair and still support the chair's position that we need to level the playing field. The poor cab companies are struggling. They have a difficult time trying to make it, and with the regulations and the restrictions that they have. And so I'm not saying that we should tie your restrictions to them, but we should equalize it some way so that it is fair. And so that's been the challenge that I've been struggling with, wanting to support the industry, wanting to support the innovative economy, which I think is important, especially for the district that I represent, and for California, at the same time providing equity. So in this particular issue, and I agree with the chair, there's no difference. I mean, these are commercial vehicles. When a person is driving that vehicle for hire, it's a commercial vehicle. I mean, they're making money off of that vehicle and off of the use of that vehicle. Now, saying that, I don't particularly believe that they should have a commercial plate the same as other vehicles that are used predominantly for hire. So in saying that, I'm going to support the bill today only for the reason that to allow for a conversation, which I believe is going to be ongoing in this next month, to find that sweet spot where there could be some equity in that, where they're paying their share so that there's no subsidy that the chair was talking about, so that everyone is doing their part to provide the infrastructure and the use and that there's some equity there. So I'm willing to support it to that point, but I want to make it clear that if there is not an agreement there, I will not be able to support it when it comes to appropriations, and I will not support it on the floor, because I do feel that there is a commercial aspect to the work that's being done, and it should be treated as such. So that's my thoughts on it today. So
Thank
I wanted
you.
to make
Do we
that
have
clear.
anybody else on the committee?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Well, just some parting comments. When I served on City Council, Hotel.com came on board, and they started selling hotel service and telling their constituents that in doing that they were paying all related taxes. What they did is collect the TOT and pocket it themselves, and the city that I represented never got a penny of it. And when we were looking at our TOT forecasts, the emergence of that industry led to a huge revenue reduction for our city. And I think the city's still been caught up in lawsuits ever since, trying to collect the money due, and we'll probably never see it. And I think it's unfortunate because everybody should play by the same rules. I've been disheartened what I've seen in the media, where they have failed to, again, take a position, the very popular position of coming after the traditional transportation model. It's unfortunate because there's 100 years of regulatory input that has gone into creating a system in which the drivers can earn a living and we can keep these vehicles on the road. And what we're in essence doing, advancing policies that lead to a monopoly for one company. And it's already very obvious what's happening in the state of California. We do have a monopoly being formed. We have taxis disappearing from the landscape. I've been talking to drivers that were formerly taxi drivers that are now become Uber drivers and have talked to me about how much less money they're earning now than they used to. We want these drivers to earn a reasonable living. I think generally the state of California, that's where we want. That's why we increase the minimum wage. That's why we regulate the economy to make sure that workers are protected, but that businesses can prosper as well. I think there's a balance there. And this legislature has seen fit to contribute to an imbalance for no real reason that benefits the public. I have a brother that operates a taxi company that's been put out there. The industry made sure they let every media outlet know that, as if it matters, because it doesn't. And I have family members that use Uber that are regular customers. And I understand those family members that use that service. It's much cheaper. And I would love to offer much cheaper services to the people of our state in every area, much cheaper products, much cheaper transportation, much cheaper housing. That's what we want for the people of our state. But we also want people out there to earn a living. We also want people to stay in business. We also want to make sure the consumer is protected and that they're living in an environment where public safety is first and foremost. And everything that we've done in this industry is erode consumer protection and erode worker protections and erode public safety protections for the consumer as well. I think it's sad. It's something that I feel that I'm a lone advocate for in this legislature. And unfortunately, the things that I believe in, environmental protection, worker protection, consumer protection, and public safety, I believe in this area of our community is being eroded drastically, and it saddens me as an advocate for those things. And the opponents can tell you whatever they want and lead the media to believe what my intentions are. They're completely wrong and mistaken, and it saddens me to have them dwell on that over and over again as a means to advocate policies that are really going to hurt people in our state. So I'll be opposing this bill today. What's that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Reading the committee analysis, which I would take out on page 5, the commercial vehicle registration requirements, but leave in the study, if you will. Is that something you're recommending as an option?
That came out of Transportation Committee.
Okay.
So
I
don't understand.
If they narrowed the bill to just on page 5, the technical amendments, the author committee agreed.
No, he's taking the amendments on the study. Now I understand what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Just wanted to clarify that there are two that I've noted in the analysis. The first one, with due respect, do not accept, and then the second amendment, which is the technical amendments related to the narrow scope of the study, I do accept.
Okay, so my problem is with the carve out and the exemption for, I support Uber and Lyft, but more and more people are driving not the less than 10 hours, but more, and it's become a similar business model to a taxi cab. And so for that reason today, I'm not supporting this bill.
Thank you. And just for the record, I support Uber and Lyft as well. I just support the consumer and the driver in this measure as well, too. So, you know, I want to make sure that they're protected.
I didn't think it was that onerous. I just felt like it was leveling the playing field on costs.
Yeah, but obviously this bill unlevels the playing field enormously, and that's the sadness of it. Anyway, we'll wait for, clerk, please, do we have a motion? No, we don't have a motion. We don't have a quorum. Oh, that's right, we lost our quorum. That's fine. We'll continue forward. We'll make a motion when we have a quorum. Thank you very much.